Listen, people.
That sounds
Listen.
awful.
This particular letter specifically proves that Anthony Fauci lied to Congress. Not lied to Congress, kind of misled Congress. Lied to Congress. And for those of you not familiar, in the Fauci dossier, you can flip through the wonderful Fauci dossier, and what you can find in the Fauci dossier is that, in fact, 18 U.S. Code, Section 1001, makes it a felony to do what he did. It's a felony. He lied, and Rand Paul did nothing to get him to actually be confronted with the evidence of his lie. Now, James, you know what? Somebody could say, well, Dave, that's a letter from October of 2014. How the hell do you expect a congressman or anybody else to find that or whatever? Okay, here's the problem. I've been publishing this thing for a year. So if there was anyone in Rand Paul's office to whom this information has been sent on multiple occasions, if there was anybody in Rand Paul's office doing their job, they would have, number one, known about this. And number two, they would have put this up when Rand Paul had Anthony Fauci telling Rand Paul that he was lying about some craziness that Anthony Fauci was making up about saving 400,000 lives or not saving 400,000 lives, depending on the way the story gets told. But James, it gets far worse than that. It turns out that I have on this particular slide set, not one, but I have letters to St. Jude Hospital, Mount Sinai Hospital, Johns Hopkins University, Rochester Medical Center, Utah State University, Mount Sinai Medical School, Emory, University of Wisconsin-Madison, Washington University, University of Texas, University of Chicago, University of Iowa, Emory University, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, University of Maryland, Vanderbilt University, University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the Director of Intramural Research, Principal Investigators of the White House Announcement on Gain-of-Function Research. I have none other than 75 pages of letters that all said that NIAID was funding gain-of-function research. 75 letters. Now, here's the funny thing. I want you to see what I'm going to do here, James, because this is the magic of this thing that we call the internet. It's this kind of very fascinating little technology. You might have heard about it before, but I just sent you all the links to all 75 pages of all of the letters that actually explicitly say that NIAID was in fact funding gain-of-function research, and that they in fact were specifically working not only on gain-of-function research, but it gets worse. If you look at pages 34, 39, 56, and 60, you'll see that specifically this was gain-of-function on SARS and MERS to increase the infectivity of the virus to make it more pathogenic. Okay?
No.
Now, before I lose my freaking mind on this thing, let's make something abundantly clear. There is a express piece of evidence sitting in front of you right now that, in fact, Anthony Fauci lied to Congress in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1001, and that is a felony violation, and Rand Paul has the ability to actually do something about it.
virus and making it more infective and more harmful. Now behind that, there's a potential benefit, right? If science could stay in front of a virus, just right in front of it, we would have a one-upmanship on dealing with it. The problem is what happens when you're not just one-upping the virus, but you're leaping it by hundreds or thousands of years, which is not something you should expect to need to address naturally. Research in this country dates back to 1999 when the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services began putting money into understanding these viruses and gain-of-function research. It's been going on for a while. In 2000, a gentleman by the name of Ralph Barrick, Professor Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, who gets money from Peter Daszak of EcoHealth, who gets money from our federal government, Dr. Barrick began working with these coronaviruses, and he successfully used reverse genetics. That should send a slight alarm bell off into your head, where he went and rescued what's called coronavirus urbani and made a very infectious clone. That was back in 2000. In 2002, 2 years later, Barrick, Young, and Curtis, all at the University of North Carolina, got a patent for chimeric DNA. Now, if you see little asterisks up here, you'll find something down at the bottom, because a researcher like myself will tell you exactly where my statement's coming from. That's what backs it up. You can go read it. You don't have to take my word for it. Some of these you might want to get somebody else to help you interpret, but you can read it. A chimer means you take parts of one animal and you combine it with parts of another animal. That's our term for what translates into gain of function, because these things aren't naturally occurring. Here's the NIH grant that paid for this. Many of you are probably painfully familiar with Dr. Senator Rand Paul and Senator Kennedy asking questions of, who is that? Dr. Fauci. Asking about gain-of-function research. Anything that says that NIH, recognizing the NIAID, the National Institutes of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, is under the umbrella of NIH. Okay? So anything that happens at NIH and anything that happens in NIAID, these things are connected. And when you get the full backstory, you'll realize that Dr. Fauci was on committees that had to oversee gain-of-function research. So when he says we didn't fund it, we didn't provide it, okay, you be the judge. Red pill, blue pill. NIH grant. This was 2002. In 2002, Dr. Shi Zhengli, anybody recognize that name, of the Wuhan Institute of Virology, stated that she combined HIV pseudovirus with SARS-CoV-1. Okay? In 2003, at Chapel Hill, Barrick, with an NIH grant affiliated with NIAID, began synthetically altering coronaviridae. That's coronavirus. That's the family of coronavirus, viridae. In 2006, you will discover, if you go read that paper, that the Chinese put together 4 viruses. HIV-1, hepatitis C virus. In 2006, they identified it as SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2. They used PCR testing to prove that that's what they had. The interesting thing about the PCR testing that they did is they followed Kary Mullis, who got the patent for PCR tests. And what Dr. Mullis said was that you stop PCR testing at 20 cycles. And that's what his patent said, because anything more causes you to artificially induce things that really aren't real. And at 20 cycles, you will find everything that's really there. Interesting note, Dr. Mullis was the last person to take on Anthony Fauci. Dr. Mullis is dead. He died from a pneumonia in November of 2019. A very healthy man with no prior health problems who took on Anthony Fauci is now dead. In 2007, the National Science Foundation did a research project looking at what do you do if you think that there's going to be a pandemic. How do we react? And the answer to that research study, paid for by your funds, was to immediately shut down international travel. Now, the head of the NIAID, who should have been aware of a federally funded research project asking the question, what do you do, told the President of the United States, don't shut down international travel. So he was either unaware of the paper, didn't understand the paper, or knew about it, and didn't say anything. If you can think of a fourth option, please let me know. In 2011, scientific community got worried about gain of function because from the University of Wisconsin and from labs in the Netherlands, a gain of function virus that was extremely infective got transferred out by accident along with less lethal forms of the virus and got sent around the world. Scientific community got a little stressed out about that. In 2013, the Middle East respiratory virus, which is also a coronavirus, showed up on the scenes in Saudi Arabia and South Korea and provided us a couple lessons. First off, it was extremely lethal. And secondly, if you didn't want people to die, you had to treat it with multiple drugs immediately. And rhesus macaques, those are animal models that you do in things, you do animal models before you do human models in research, showed what to do. Varick and Chinese scientists also in 2013 isolated 3 corona vats with an HKU4 spike protein, which was unable to infect people. Keep that in mind. The HKU4 was unable to infect people. In 2014, our CDC accidentally exposed its workers to anthrax. It also released this deadly virus, and the NIH discovered vials of smallpox that had been sitting around for 50 years that people had forgotten about. And that resulted in the Obama administration calling a halt to gain-of-function research under pressure by the scientific community. Because if you remember it, it was something you heard about after the fact, after the scientific community got stressed out. So when you're thinking all scientists are bad, we're not. When you're thinking all doctors are bad, we're not. When you think all attorneys are bad, we're not. But some are. In 2015, remember HKU4? Not infective in humans? In 2015, Zheng Li altered it, intentionally changed 2 mutation sites and caused the virus to be extremely infective. This was not a naturally occurring process. She wrote in the paper that she did it. And wait a minute, it was paid for by NIH grants.